Okay, sorry for starting a bit late. Let's bring up the sharing page. Okay. Okay, we're holding the middle of the Maamar on. We're talking about again the four levels of Avadim, of the servants and slaves, and how we learn and apply this to our Avodas Hashem. So we have the Evet Knani, and like we said, the Evet Knani, the Knani slave, is Behafker Nichloi. He doesn't want to work. Everything he does is because of Yiras Hashevet. He's scared of the stick, which the Rebbe gives us many levels of that in Avodas Hashem. He's scared of punishment, scared of not being connected. Sometimes the punishment has to come and scared of not doing what you should be doing, but it all comes from fear. Not that you want to do it. Fundamentally, you would like not to serve. But you have to serve. You have no choice. Because you're scared of either the spiritual or even the material, physical, or painful stick that Hashem could hit you with. So he says, let's start again over here. You have sometimes with the stick, spiritual stick of disconnect, doesn't scare the person because the person wants to be free. Doesn't care if you're gonna hit him or her spiritually. So what could affect this person if the person should continue to serve Hashem is if it affects them physically. You'll be pained for other forms of discomfort, whether it's an effect your parnasa, etc. Or even if it's for the positive that you want parnasa, but it's the same thing. Because you're scared that if you don't serve Hashem, you'll be lacking in parnasa or other things. You serve things that are uncomfortable and painful. This is a person where, like we said, the different levels of the Rasha, and the highest level we said of the Evet Kanani is like Tivi from the Rabban Gamliel, which is kosher haya, which means to say that he was like the Beinini who does everything you're supposed to do, machshavadi b'maisa, never does anything wrong, but it's all because of you want to do what you're supposed to do because you're scared of the spiritual stick. You don't want to be disconnected. And technically, you're no different. You would like to be free. The fundamental point of the Evet Kanani is Eved behafker nichloi. The Eved doesn't want to do what he's doing. He's doing it because he's scared. Yiras Hashevet. And the Shevet could be spiritual fear or physical fear. And like we said, different, and that reaches both in the level of Beinani and the level of Rasha. And sometimes the Rasha is on different levels. The Rasha wants to be good. And the Yiras Hashevet is realizing that when I do an Avera, I'm disconnected and I don't want to be disconnected. We have the person who Pasha doesn't want to do anything. And like we said, the toiv, the good in this person, is really concealed. Like we learned yesterday, Menashe, king of Israel, of Yehuda. That the Pasha burned physically. He returned to Hashem. And he was saved. There's the person who never does tshuva, not even if he or she suffers, spiritually or physically. The person is so disconnected from any good that even the Yisurim, meaning to say, when a person, even Menashe, Melech Yehuda, which will be learned to open up, a person opens up to Navi with the Mefarshim to learn what Menashe did. I mean, he murdered people, served by the Zara, killed his grandfather, Yishaya Hanavi. We're talking about the Gemara in Sanhedrin says, he was a Talmud Chacham, maybe he was a Rasha. But when he was pained, he returned. And the Rebbe is saying that comes from, why would he return from a gashmistic pain? It's deeper than just saying that he wants to be saved because if he's scared, even though the Gemara doesn't give him a lot of credit for his tshuva, and then he said that he called out to every other god, and he made it. The Gemara says he's one of the people that made a kind of talk to God and said to God, "If you're a real God, come and save me." Means he played with God, he manipulated God, but nevertheless, it connected to the type. Even though you could say he manipulated and he had an agenda, but at that point when he did tshuva, there was type. Because Hashem, who knows everything, did save him. You say you have a person that's so disconnected that the Toiv doesn't reveal itself at all, and therefore you don't do any tshuva. Refuse to do tshuva, knowing that what you're doing could even cause you yisur, is causing you your discomfort, your unhappiness. And therefore, the good that you do have, which is so disconnected, could only be in the person in a way of makif, of encompassing. Halakha is any 10 Jews together that are halakhically Jewish, the Shekhinah is there. Why is the Shekhinah there with any 10 Jews? Because there's a makif. There's an encompassing level of toiv, of nefesh alikis on that person. From all the levels that Rebbe says of the Rasha v'toiv, whether it is the highest level, the lowest level, and included in this is the Beini Shvat Rabban Gamliel in TV Abdi Kosher in TV Abdi Kashar Kola Avadim Kosher Hoya that TV was not like any other servant, any other slave. He's a kosher, he's good, and that's compared to the Beinoni who does everything good. And he calls Zen Nichlo B'chin Zevet Krani. This is all characterized in the general idea of a Kanani slave, based on the fundamental idea of Hafker or Nicholai, that servant doesn't want to serve. There's something that's forcing the person to serve. Exactly as I just said, you're not doing that way because for itself. The fundamental point is over here, you're scared of the stick, spiritual or physical, material, whatever the stick is. There's something that scares you into service, even on the highest level of service, like Tivi, which was kosher, which was good, which represents the idea of the Beinoni, the Beinoni of Tanya. The avoid of the person is not for himself. You're not doing because you want to serve. Because you're scared of the consequences. This is what we said yesterday, that there's the 5 levels of the soul. The 2 higher levels are the world of Atzilus. And then we have the neshama, which is the world of Bria, the ruach, the spirit is the world of Yitzira, the world of formation, and the nefesh is the world of Asiyah, of action. That includes all the Eved Ivri. It's an avodah that's based on I don't want to serve God. I'm serving God because I'm forced to, spiritually forced to, or materially forced to. And it's on the spectrum, includes even from the Beinoni to the Tzaddik to the lowest level of Rasha V'Tevle. You're saying, what is functional in this person? Your mind is not there because you don't want it. Your heart is not there because you don't want it. So you don't have the moach, which is the Chachmei Bina Das, the Chabad, because you're not interested. You don't have the lev, Chesed before its verse, because you're not interested. All you have is the action, and the action includes even thought, which is in the Netzach Yisayid, in the projection. This is levar migufe, outside the body. So rak masha shaykh lepoil. This is only in action, and in action, including thought, the person could either be perfect, less perfect, like we discussed at different levels yesterday. The Inyan zagupa who would echtifiyah. And the idea that you're doing it b'poil is by force, because you have the shevet, you have the stick. That's the idea of action that's all about just the action. There's no heart there. That's in a person's service of God. How does this reflect? And where is this found in the davening? Where do we find this sort of avoid in davening? And we're going to see that the whole davening itself is broken up into these 4 categories. This is the level of moida ani, where a person wakes up in the morning and says, I acknowledge, moida ani. I don't understand it, I don't feel it, but I acknowledge this is the way it is, this is what I have to do. Hoidu lavaya ad baruch Shem. It's all up until Baruch Shamar. Baruch Shamar starts Rebbe Sukkah. So from moida ani, and this is especially Nusach Chabad, where we say moida till Hoidu, including Hoidu, which is all part of Hoidah. Baruch Shamar starts Pesukei D'Zimra in Nusach Ari. The Pesukei D'Zimra, because the Alter Rebbe says once you start Pesukei D'Zimra, we need his pointiness. That's already using contemplation. You start saying Sipa Shvachim Shamakim. We're talking about the greatness of Hashem. Al B'Hoidu Hurak Hoidah. That's Baruch Shamar. That's Pesukei D'Zimra. You sing words of song, words of praise that are connected. You have to realize that you're praising something. You can't acknowledge praise. You have to actually understand it, feel it. But in the first part, there's only Hoidi, just acknowledgement. That's the three lowest of the first 9 midos, meaning to say from 3 intellectual and 6 emotional. We're not talking about malchus. Is Netzach Hoidi Soid is the action. Okay, so that's Eved Kanani. Eved Ivri. What's the level of the Eved Ivri? Okay, here already holding already a higher level. We're not talking about a person that's just being forced. Fear means to be forced because of fear of the shevet, the stick, from the spectrum of what that stick represents and how it's being applied. Eved Ivri, the Hebrew slave is not like the Canaan slave. Eved Ivri, because the pasuk, when it describes us about the service of the Hebrew slave, it says, he shouldn't be treated like the Eved Canaan. You can't give him too hard of avoid. You're not allowed to put tremendous efforts of labor on the Hebrew slave. You can't treat the Hebrew slave like you would the Canaan slave. What's the definition of avoidus perach here? Perach means something you don't want to do. What's it mean to be doing hard work? Hard work, like it says Mitzrayim, it didn't do work necessarily at one point. That was just schlepping stones. That's physically difficult. Even if a man had to do a woman's job, that was avoidus perach. The Rashi says why? Because you don't want to do woman's work. A man would rather do men's work, even if physically it's harder, than to do what women have to do, vice versa. So it's defined by the idea of kafiyah behind it. Because the avodah, the service of the Eved Ivri, and avodas Hashem, is not coming from a place of force. The Eved Ivri already has feeling in the service. What's it? So why is he called an Eved? Again, there's many Maamar, fantastic Maamar that discuss these ideas of how we apply of Avadim, famous Maamar of B'yem Ashdei Asarei Yoim, with the Rebbe explains in his Yudal Nissen Fabrein of Tav Shemamid the ideas of the Eved that sits at the table. Like he's an Eved, he sits at the table of the king. It's not like the Eved that just collects the bones under the table, who gets the food that's brought out. He's sitting at the table, but he's still an Eved. So there's many times where we discuss the difference between a Sar and an Eved. So here we're talking about an Eved Ivri, which means he has feeling, but he's still an Eved. We'll see why he's an Eved. Why is he an Eved, he says. So fundamentally here, the first Eved Kanani is an Eved because he doesn't want to do anything. He doesn't want to serve at all. Here, the Eved wants to serve, but not ready to do Shinui Mehus, not ready to change your character. I want to serve Hashem as I am. Take me as I am. If I'm an exciting person, I want to serve Hashem in an exciting way. If I'm a melancholic person, if I'm a person who's more the atzvus memrirus bitterness, I'm going to serve Hashem that way. If I'm a giving person, I'm going to serve Hashem in giving. And if I'm less giving, I'm going to serve Hashem less giving. This is very much connected to today's Rambam, the second Prakim of Hilchos Deos, where the person is not ready to change themselves. So you take your personality to serve Hashem. The Rambam kind of guides us. What's the difference in Avodas Beinoni, Avodas Chassidus, etc. The person's not ready to do Shinui Mehus. I'm not ready to change my character. Even Zemimash on the Rayim. So where do we see this? Avodas Eved Ivri Begashmis. Where does it show itself in the Eved itself, in the laws of the Eved of the Hebrew slave? Maybe what is the job of the Hebrew slave? He doesn't have to do avodas perach. So what is his job? The halacha tells us. For instance, he brings kol hatzterach l'sabayis michutz b'pnim. His job is to take all the things that are needed for the house, to bring them from the outside of the house in the house. Go to the field, collect the apples, bring them inside the house. Bring the wheat or the flour in the house. Bring the groceries in. You're not cooking anything. You're not changing anything. That's the Amar of Bria. You're bringing everything from outside of Hashem, out in the world, bringing it inside into place of kedusha, but as is. The Kivan should never say any roish yasa on the batsmai. Why is the servant doing it? Because it's not if a master has slaves, the slave has to do that. It's not even for his family to do. Even the maidservant, the Hebrew maidservant, doesn't do that. Doesn't schlep the apples inside. Doesn't schlep the groceries inside. This is the job of the Hebrew slave. Maybe call it strachas habayis lifnim. Although he's bringing everything from outside inside, Rebbe is going to give this as a parable to Avodas Hashem. But you can't eat it yet. It hasn't been turned in. It hasn't been made edible. For something for it to be turned into dishes, it has to be processed. We're talking about, let's say, it has to be, you take the chicken, you bring it in after it's shecht, it has to be cooked. Flour has to be made into cake, bread. In order for it to be edible, it has to be baked, or it has to be grilled, or it has to be cooked. That's where the job of the Hebrew maidservant, the manservant, Hebrew manservant just brings it inside. That his job, he doesn't make it edible. He makes it available for the Amavriya to cook. What does this mean in Avodah? You're not ready to change anything. Just like the chicken was raw when it was outside, it's raw inside. You haven't made it edible yet, but you've taken it out of the Rishus HaRabim of the world of separation, right? We talk about Rabim is always the world of Tuma. Yachid, singular, is in the world of Kedusha. So you've taken it out of the Rabim and brought it into the Yachid, but you haven't changed the Mahus. And in your own personality, it's not just how you engage things. In your own personality, you're only ready to take things within yourself that is exposed and vulnerable to the outside and to use it for Kedusha, but you're not ready to change your character. That says, he says, you haven't changed anything essentially. You brought it from the outside to the inside. It's the same thing with the spiritual, like we said before. Because that's what I'm a person. A person who has feeling. You're not ready to change your character. You're using what you have and applying it to Yiddishkeit, to Torah mitzvahs, to Hashem. Means you're ready to give God your midos, your character, your natural, your midos tivium, your natural character, and apply them to Hashem the way they are. If you're a person who is in kibbutz and narrow, everything is in a small space or an expanded space, however it is, that's your character. You're going to serve Hashem that way. You use your character, the kedusha. You take it from the outside to the inside. This means to be from the outside inside. Nevertheless, you haven't changed your character. Your character hasn't changed. Just what you apply your nature to, it has changed. If you're naturally a narrow person, you remain that. If you're in nature is to be abundance, expanded. Then that's where you would serve Hashem. But your everything is inspired and focused and holy. Why is it that you're not changing your nature? Because you're not applying any intellect. Intellect will understand to control, not to let your nature be in control. The Eved Ivri, the Eved Kanani we say is Netzachai Yisayid, is the external, it's just Asiyah. The Eved Ivri, the Hebrew slave, has heart, has the midos, but the midos as they are. If you would have sechel, if you would have chacham binadas, controlling your emotions, you would know that even if your nature is to respond a certain way, even within holiness, you say no. Torah says, or the moment demands a different behavior. So if you don't apply your sechel to it, your intellect to it, so you only go with how your emotions react naturally to every situation. Because had you applied your moich, your intellect, your sechel, then you would be able to use it to control your character, or especially the character of your heart, of your midos, of your hergish, of your feeling. Besides, because you're not applying your intellect, your mind, your sechel, you're only allowing your midos to be as is. Therefore, you're not changing the character. There is nothing to change your character. The midos can't change on their own, which is an important point to note. That the Rebbe is saying over here that what is it that changes the midos is the sicha, the mind that understands. We have many stories. We went to Maamar and the story of Rebbe Achim and Tradion, that when he said, it's connected to Purim, and he says what's going to be with him because he teaches Torah a whole day. And Rabbi Yosef Kisma said the Romans are going to burn you. And so Rabbi Yosef Kisma says, you want to know what his end is going to be. He says, did you ever do anything? The Alter Rebbe says, what do you mean, did you ever do anything? He's teaching Torah a whole day. He says, we don't know if you're teaching Torah because that's your nature. He said that he once took money and he wasn't sure if it was for tzedakah or for Purim, and he went and gave it all to tzedakah. He didn't want to take it. He did an act of harachava, which is broadness, which is opposite from the act of an intellectual of a teacher. And from then Rabbi Yosef Kisma says that my lot should be like your lot. Why? Because he realized that he's serving Hashem out of sicha. His emotions don't take control of him. It's not his character, his nature. He's able to control his nature because the mind understands is stronger than the heart. It doesn't change himself. He's only revealing the chilui b'rachima, his love and his fear that he naturally has for Hashem. And every Jew has that. Although their love and fear that are natural. So where's that avodah? Why is it called an Eved? Because the fact that you're applying it to Hashem, because naturally, even though you have this kind of love, this kind of fear naturally, but where should you apply it naturally? The tiva is also to yourself, because you love your body a lot, you love yourself a lot. So I'd rather eat than I'd rather express love in my food than in avodas Hashem. So where is that avodah? Is where you're applying it. But because you haven't changed your mahus, so you haven't changed the character, you just how you're applying it then. Instead of applying it to yourself, what you want, you're applying it because you love Hashem. What are you doing? You're taking off all the concealments that would distract the midas to be focused on self, to reveal your nefesh halikis, to apply your character of your midas to avodas Hashem. You haven't changed your nature. If you're a narrow person, you stay narrow. Everything is exact. How much do I have to learn? Not because you're not bespashtus, one slice of bread. Or bespashtus, more broad. And because you're going to act in this way, it won't change on itself. The Rebbe says, it's not possible. Without the sicha, understand the intellect of it, to change your character. Similar to we say a person who's in prison can't release himself. Your emotions, in theory, are imprisoned in your character, and therefore it can't release itself. And what would release it is the mind. And in the neshama, in the level of the soul, this is the spirit, which is higher than the nefesh, and it's not in the world of asiyah, it's in the world of yitzira form. That's where the place of the avodah of the emotions is. What is this in tefillah? Right, we're applying it all to the different sections. It's very dimensional, this Maamar. This is from Baruch Shamar, the Pesukah D'Zibra. This is from Baruch Shamar 3 Yishtabach. We talk about the greatness of Hashem, which is building up your love and fear for God. Ma'arav Masach Hashem, Agad Masach Hashem, Chashem Abdul Vagura. These are all things. We sing the song of the splitting the Red Sea. That's all the Halalukas. After it, that's all the avodah of the Ruach, Yitzira, the avodah from Baruch Shamar 3 Yishtabach. This is the awaken through the saying of the Pesukah D'Zibra, awakens the emotions, and therefore the emotions should be applied to kedusha. It's still not intellect. Okay, so we're saying it's not mamish, no moyach at all. Why? Because you have to think of the words of davening and understand it to ignite your heart. Without using your mind, you can't even awaken your emotions and apply them to Hashem. But it's not a moyach that controls and changes the midos, that just reveals as they are. This is called moichin shebamidos, the intellect of the midah, not an intellect above and in controlling of the midah. Okay, let's see how much further we have. It's a full Maamar. But we're going to stop here, and he's going to go into this in the difference of learning. Start that Be'ez Hashem. Try to it's a small little piece of continue. See this in learning of Torah, the difference between moichin and midos of the Avadim of the Hebrew slave in how a person learns in what's called migros, kind of superficial, or eon if you intensify and focus on your studying. There's different ways of learning Talmud. The person could be focused, kind of learn shitchis more fast. You can't just read words, you have to understand what you're reading. Even if you're reading it kind of in a way of girsa. We know the law is, the halacha is, unlike Torah, but you have to understand what you're saying. You just read the words quickly, that's not called reading, i.e. starting Rambam now. You have to at least try to understand at least some sort of basic of the words in the reading of the laws, what you're saying. Okay, you say, what are we seeing over here? There's definitely mind, intellect for girsa. The difference is when you learn something iyun or girsa, and this is trying to say the same thing of the moyach that awakens the midas or changes the midas. But the mechim that you're using for girsa is just to understand the basics of what's saying. The idea when you sit learning the iyun is you should become so one with the study, it changes your mahus because you're trying to understand exactly, get deep in the iyun of every halach and every word. The whole different style of learning and the whole different style of ibergegebenkeit, of commitment to the learning. The migros, when you learn girsa, you're not applying yourself like that. You're not investing the mind. You're investing the mind just to comprehend the concepts. Maybe not because you're only getting it the superficial or the basic surface. You're not ready to commit intellectually to the idea until you become one with the intellect. You almost in the mind. They say that great actors that the character is so part of them that their whole character changes with the character that they're trying to portray in an acting. But in Megirsa, your mind stays the same. You understand what the Gemara is saying. They're not to try to really become one with the message of the Talmud. When a person davens the Pesukei de Zimra, although you're using your mind to understand and awakens the midas. You're not looking to become one with the ideas of what you're talking about davening. It's just to awaken the midas. And therefore, you would change your midas if you're really applying yourself. Like it says, first you have to organize your praises of God before you start talking about yourself. But it's kind of organizing. It's not to become one with it. Not saying that you should not try to understand deeper Pesukei de Zimra, but talking about this is what it's characterized basically. Therefore, it's like learning the gears. Therefore, the midas don't come from the intellect. Only that the intellect reveals the emotions. Therefore, it doesn't change character. Away from Gesang, you avoid the Avadim. This is the Avodah of the Hebrew slave. Okay. So good. We learned this. Tomorrow we'll start with the definition of the Amavri, and then we'll go to the Bas. And then put it all together and avoid this Hashem. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for joining.